Hello, and welcome to my new podcast. Yay! Honestly, I am so excited. I'm so happy that I'm finally here at launch day with the podcast. I feel like a podcast is the very natural progression of my recent YouTube videos, which I just discuss things, any topic that kind of comes to mind, and I just feel like the format is best suited for a podcast. So I'm so excited to progress into this new world, onto this new kind of social media journey, and see where it takes me. I would discuss the name of the podcast, but as I sit here and film this, I'm not actually sure what the podcast name is going to be. I'm also aware I cannot keep prolonging the process, so I'm now just recording, and I believe the name will just come to me in the middle of the night this week, and then I'll just decide on it. But yeah, first episode, so excited. Thank you so much for being here. For my first episode, I was umming and ahhing for so long about what to have it on, what to record, and I had a topic in mind that I'd been wanting to talk about for a while, but it was kind of personal, wasn't really sure if I wanted to share it yet, and I was also still like healing from it as well, so I really wanted to kind of gather my thoughts before I did. But it now feels like actually a very good time to share my experiences on this topic, given all that is happening in the UK at the moment with kind of rising racial tensions. I kind of just wanted to shed light on a different kind of issue to do with race that specifically Black women face a lot, and I have faced and have, a lot of experience in. And from being on TikTok, I have seen so many Black women talk about their experiences in the corporate work world, and what I found so fascinating, whether the girl was from America, the UK, somewhere else in Europe, how similar all of our stories were. Like, it's eerie, and I just thought, no, I definitely kind of have to share my own perspective now, and also just my wiser thoughts on this topic and some reflections that I've been doing since my experience. So I figured the best way to kind of go through this episode would be to share my personal experience, of my experiences within the corporate work world, and then kind of go on to share my wider kind of opinions and just things that I've been thinking of over the past few months. So get strapped in, let's go. We need to go back to last year, February, when I started my new job at a really great company that I was so excited to work at. If you do follow me on YouTube, you'll probably recall me doing kind of a mini update video where I spoke on this opportunity, how ideal it was. It was in like my dream industry, which is fashion. And I was so excited for the role. It was slightly more senior than what I was doing before in social media. Like, honestly, it couldn't have been a better job. And also the job came along when I was still umming and ahhing about whether I still wanted to pursue my career in the corporate work world. So it kind of just came along, and I was like, do you know what a great opportunity, let's apply, let's see where it goes. And it was a very intense recruitment process. It was about 5 stages long, plus like a task in the middle. So yeah, super intense, super long. It went over a few months, and I just couldn't believe, honestly, when they called me up and said I had the job. I was like, wait, what? Like, honestly, I was shocked, but really excited. And of course, before you accept a job, like, you do your research in terms of what people say about the company and whatnot. And to be honest, all of the things I found were overwhelmingly positive. Like, there wasn't really anything negative I found aside from one review, and it was a super long review, super kind of like really detailed. And I think at the time I remember reading it and just kind of thinking, I don't know, like, this is kind of one person's experience, you know what I mean? And I'm the type of person where I like to have my own experiences with something before I decide that it's not for me. Had it been more than one, maybe I would have taken it into account, but it was just a singular one. I was like, okay, the rest are positive, let's just keep going. So I accepted the job and I started, and the job honestly was great at first. I was working on a team of 3, including me. So manager and colleague, and yeah, they seemed really nice. Everything seemed nice. Everyone I was meeting around the company seemed really nice. It just was good vibes. And I was obviously so nervous as well about starting a new job. That's like the first time I'd started a new job in my corporate career after my first job. Does that make sense? It makes sense. I was just so excited. I was on good vibes. I was like, yeah, let's go, let's get it. And yeah, very shortly after I started, the first kind of red flag happened. So one day when I was in the office just working, about a few weeks after I started, a very, very, very senior member of staff kind of came over to the group that I was sitting with and was chatting to, my colleagues, and then saw that, a new face type thing. So he introduced himself to me, I introduced myself, and he then went on to ask if I was on a specific program that was for Black interns. So, and it took me aback at the time, because it's like, I don't know, why would you automatically assume that I'm in like the most junior position in the company because I'm Black? Like, it's giving microaggression. Like, what the hell? What kind of assumption? And it was very bizarre, because he could have just asked like, oh, what's your role, or whose team have you joined? Do you know what I mean? And I would have just answered, but he kind of just assumed that the only way a Black girl like me could be new to the company is she's got to be on that Black internship scheme. And I just remember it taking me aback. I was quite offended, I'm not going to lie, at the time, but I kind of took it in my stride. I was very new. I'm not trying to, do you know what I mean, beef someone at that level of seniority as well. So I just kind of made a mental note of it, but it did kind of take me aback, and it was a bit disappointing to hear so early on and from such a senior member of staff. And because of how much the interaction stood out to me, I actually did share with my manager at the time that, hey, this has happened. And I feel like if you're a Black person in the workplace, whenever you have like interactions with people that do have like racial undertones to them, I think it's so important to speak to your line manager, even if not to do anything about it, just to flag that this has happened. Because if it ends up being a repeat thing, having that evidence that you have spoken to someone about it will really help you. I didn't go that far as to kind of document it or put it in writing or anything like that, but I did kind of have a chat with my manager. And I'm not going to lie, like even at that time, my own manager's response also then irritated me, because it kind of felt like she was trying to be like, kind of felt like a white savior type attitude of, oh my gosh, do you want me to speak to him? I will tell him that that's unacceptable. And from the way that she was speaking, it didn't really feel like she was wanting to do it because she was concerned that I was like upset and I was new. And, that's obviously not the type of thing that you want to hear when you're new. But it kind of felt like she was doing it for her own benefit. And I don't know, I've been around a lot of middle class liberals, and I find that they just love to do this. They love to kind of speak for and over you, especially when it's on your behalf, so that they can look, like they're down for the cause and, really about it and stuff. And I just don't really like that. So I categorically told her, no, please don't. Let's just keep it between us. I don't want to start any issues with this manager. Obviously, I'm new. I'm trying to do my thing. Do you know what I mean? I just wanted to let you know. She said, okay, cool, fine. We left that there, and things were going okay. However, I started to notice that my manager seemed to have a little bit of an issue with me that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And it started off very kind of innocently, where, she would give me feedback for my work and I would take it on board, because obviously I'm in a new industry. So yes, I know how to do my job, but it's a new industry. So I'm not going to bulldoze my way through, and I'm quite happy to kind of just take, a little bit of a beat and allow my manager to lead and kind of show me, how things are done, how, we normally do things at the business. So I was happy to kind of take the feedback, but I feel like as the time went on, the feedback started to feel very kind of personal, and it felt like any piece of work I submitted, there was always an issue with it. Sometimes I would spend hours and hours on a piece of work, and then she would come back with feedback that would be the complete opposite of what I'd done. Directions for me were often quite unclear, so I would often spend time doing what I thought she'd asked me to do, only to find that I've missed the mark again type thing. And this kind of carried on going. And like I said, I'm fine with, critical feedback and doing what I do in a creative role. You will get feedback sometimes that feels personal, and you have to learn to just, it's the needs of the business. Do you know what I mean? So I'm quite good at like accepting just feedback where it needs to be done, but I can also know when it just feels like more than that. So there was kind of just that going on. I then began to notice that she just never seemed to really like praising me or my work. And it was very odd, because other people around the business that I would do work for or I would work with had so many positive things to say about me, my work, how I was doing. And she just never really did. And I recall a very specific time where a member of a different team asked me to make a promotional paid video for the business to promote a particular service. And I was like, okay, sure. I hadn't really done that. Video is not really my specific like niche, but I can make videos, engaging videos. So I was like, sure, let me give it a try. It was for the CEO, so I was very excited to obviously do a piece of work, do you know what I mean, that would be seen and approved and worked on like by him. So I did the work. He really loved it. The girls were very happy with the work that I sent over, and they were just over the moon. I only had like one amends to make to that video, so I was really chuffed that I had, you know, submitted a piece of work that had gone down so well. So much so that of course I wanted to share that with my manager and also just let her know, you know, what I'm working on around the business. So I told her, and she was just very hostile. Like, I don't know, she just didn't really have much to say. I sent it to her and she just wasn't really, I don't know, it was weird, but I was just like, okay, like, let's just leave it. Fast forward a few weeks now, we are on a call with these same girls and they are looking for another creative piece of work. And one of them says, oh, well, you know, Ekaete can do a video for us like she did last time. And then she says to my colleagues, my manager and my colleague, like, oh, you know, you remember that video that she did? I kid you not, on this Zoom call, there was a pause of about, it must have been a solid 10 seconds. And in Zoom time, I mean, a 10-second pause is a long time, right? So there's just a long pause. I'm looking at these two, like, I don't know why they're acting like they've not seen like the video before. It was really weird. And even the other girls picked up on it and they were like, oh, you know, well, if you haven't seen it, you definitely should, because it's absolutely amazing. The CEO loved it. We loved it. And we'd love like something similar along those lines. And she honestly was just flat, like just no response, no like anything. It was the most bizarre thing. And I think that's when it kind of clicked for me that she just seemed to have like an issue with me. As the months kind of like go on, it just kind of feels like I'm always struggling to understand like what it is exactly that she wants from me, and also how she wants me to like be. And you know, I'm new, I'm a trier, I'm trying to prove myself. So it's like, okay, this week I'm going to try to be a bit more like this or a bit more like that. And just nothing I was doing seemed to be, I don't know, there was just still this kind of weirdness. And when you keep trying and you don't get like a change in someone, it starts to like take a toll on you, right? So I was beginning to suffer now because, you know, I was getting this constant feedback on my work that made me feel like I just wasn't good enough, like I wasn't up to par, or I wasn't doing what was expected of me. And I take my work very seriously. Honestly, I take so much pride in my work. I love what I do. I picked a career that I genuinely love. So it's really important for me to do work that I'm genuinely like proud of and to do my best work. And it just felt like I wasn't really like doing that, you know? And it was just very conflicting because other people were telling me that I was doing great work, that so-and-so has been saying, oh, the socials look great. But then on my own team, I'm just not really getting like that kind of affirmation. It's making me feel like I'm doing something wrong. So alongside this kind of tense-ish relationship that I had with my manager, she would also make like very strange comments towards me. Just so we'd have, you know, meetings on Zoom predominantly because I would work from home a lot of people would work from home, and I would turn up on time to the meeting and she would make jokes about the fact that I was always on time to our meetings. Which I don't know, is that something really to like complain about and bring up? I don't know. She would also make jokes about the fact that I always came like prepared to the meeting. So we would obviously have regular one-to-ones, and we would have a like Google document that you're supposed to fill before the one-to-one, just so, you know, you could make sure that they were a little bit structured and beneficial. And, you know, I'm not always a big fan of one-to-ones. I don't feel sometimes I need that much like contact or whatever, but obviously, if it's part of, you know, what we need to do, then I'm going to do it. So I would fill in my part of the sheet, come to the meeting, she would be late and her part would not be filled in, which again is fine. Like, I'm not dying to do this, but I don't know, if I'm going to take the time out to do it, it would be nice if you also do it as well. But she would make jokes about the fact that I always had the sheet filled in. She'd be like, oh my God, you're so organized, aren't you? And it's like, yeah, we're at work, do you know what I mean? And just, yeah, so just little comments like that. And overall, the vibe that I got from her was that it just seemed to really, really irritate her that I was like good at what I did, had good ideas, would speak up if, you know, I felt differently about an idea, always did good work, my work did well. Like, people, like, it just seemed to annoy her that I was like doing well and good at my job. It was bizarre. My self-esteem really, really started going downhill, I'd say from about like 6-7 months in. And I just started to become very, very anxious being at work. I used to get excited about going in and, you know, starting work, and I hated it now. I literally got like the worst version of the Sunday scaries, but like every day of the week. I was just so anxious. I became like quite withdrawn, just went into myself a lot. And it kind of began to feel, as I said before, that no matter what I did, it didn't seem to like please my manager. And the only time she actually seemed to be like quite like happy with me was when I was being quite docile and like to myself and not really speaking. Then all of a sudden she'd be like really bubbly. It was honestly such a weird dynamic. And it got to about Christmas time, and you know, the break was incredible. Like I was counting down the days to the break, and we got about 2 and a bit weeks off. And then I started the year off basically working by myself because they were both on holiday. And I had such a great period of time during those, I think it was 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks, that I was by myself doing all of the work. And it was so great. Like I really enjoyed it. I was working with more people around the business. The content was doing really well. And it was just really, really good. Honestly, I was really enjoying myself in the role. And I just had surprised myself because I'd been feeling so down about the job for so long. And all of a sudden I just felt great, and I felt really inspired. I felt like people respected me and the work I was doing. And then my kind of manager came back, and things then went back to how they were before, where it just was basically this dictatorship where she would just tell me what to do, exactly how she wanted it done, and that was it. And again, like I say, it further confused me because when she wasn't here, I was doing everything by myself and it was going fine. So I didn't understand what this kind of hand holding was about. And it felt like I was missing something. And she just, I just don't know. Also a lot of instances where she would like withhold information from me that I would need to do my job and to do my work. So I would not have all the information that I needed. And other times she would kind of make out that I didn't need to be involved in a project, and then later on she'd be like, oh, actually we need your input, but I haven't obviously been on the project, so I can't really give as much as I could give had I known what was going on. So there was just a lot of that, her just trying to keep me, you know, off certain things and keep certain things from me. And it was just it was just very odd. And by the time it got to the end of January, I was at my wit's end with this job. And I think at that point, it just became very apparent that the issue was this manager. And for whatever reason, she just did not like me. Didn't matter what I did, what I tried to do. And I think that was when I began to have feelings of, I think I should probably leave. Like I want to leave, I'm just not happy here. And that was around the same time that I started developing physical symptoms of stress because of the situation that I was in and the pressure that I was under and the way that my manager was making me feel. And I started, the first one was sweaty palms. I've never, ever had sweaty palms before. I don't really sweat that much, don't really get that sweaty. But my palms started being really, really sweaty, and I started getting shakes in my hands. So Monday to Friday, my palms would just be like constantly moist and I would just be shaking. It got to the point where I began to get really self-conscious as well about coming into the office, because it kind of just felt like, I don't know, I was convinced that if my manager didn't like me, maybe that meant that other people around the business didn't really like me as well. I was then unable to sleep as well, just having really, really sleepless nights, going to bed so late, thinking about work the next day and what it was going to be like, how she was going to be with me. And just overall, like my anxiety levels like skyrocketed, and I get anxious sometimes, but I've never been anxious like that before. Like it was really, really bad. And at that point, my fiance was like, you really need to think about leaving if it's making you feel like this, because, you know, this is not sustainable how you're being, and it's not very nice to like see you like this as well. Like it's sad. You're just so sad all the time. I was kind of hanging in there, sticking in there until it got to the last week that I was employed there. And that was just an accumulation of situation after situation after situation. We also had a very big meeting that week with the CEO, and we had been in a meeting discussing ideas, and once again, as per usual, she just didn't like my ideas, so she was incessantly interrupting me, and it got to the point where things got tense on this call. And if you have ever worked under a white woman, you will know this very, very common tactic that not even just white women, white people that have got issues with black people, what they love to do is goads them into an altercation. So they will try and antagonize you so that you react either by, you know, raising your voice, swearing, yelling, getting really irate, and then they will then use that as, oh, look how unprofessional she's being. So I was very aware in that moment that that was the road that she was trying to go down. And if anyone has actually watched Love Island this season, the UK one, you will have seen a similar dynamic with Sean, who was on there, and Mimi and Josh, those two black characters, and how he seemed to just have a vendetta for Josh. And he seemed very, very keen to antagonize Josh into being the scary black man and giving a scary black man reaction to his goading. And that was basically what my manager was trying to do to me on this call. And I could definitely peep that she was trying to do that. And I'm very professional, so I just was not getting led down that path. And I said to her, look, it's nearly the end of the meeting. Why don't we just like take a beat and just recoup tomorrow and we can just like discuss it. She did not like that. She hung up on the call. And after that, she then began to demand that I have a meeting with her. And because of her tone and the way she was coming at me, I could tell that she basically wanted to strip me down and intimidate me and tell me off. And I hadn't done anything wrong. You know, I'm allowed to share my ideas. I'm allowed to professionally have alternative opinions and views to things so long as I express them in a respectful way, which I felt like I had. So I just knew that I was in the right. Do you know what I mean? I hadn't done anything wrong that required me to be summoned to a meeting like that. She had demanded that I have this meeting first thing in the morning with her. And I had told her like before, I don't like having meetings the minute I step into the office. Like I like to, you know, settle in, get myself like ready for the day and do the morning things that I need to do. Can we do it later in the day? No, it needs to be this morning. So I said to her, well, you know, what is it about then? She didn't want to tell me what it was about. So I said, oh, I mean, am I in trouble? She said, no, I just want to see how you are. So I said, okay, well, if it's just a little catch up, then we can, you know, we can speak surely during the day. She just was not having that, at which point I stopped responding to her. We didn't have the call in the morning, but we did have our team call about half an hour later. She proceeded in this team call to basically like ambush me and like shout at me, telling me that I needed to stay on this call because I needed to talk to her. At this point, this woman proceeded to tell me that she didn't like my tone. If you know anything about racial microaggressions and tone policing and what that means to Black women and Black people in general, you will know how egregious it is to ever say to a Black person who is just speaking that you don't like their tone. And it was just at that point I chose to disengage again from the conversation. I'm not having an argument with you over Zoom. My colleague was also in this call, so it wasn't just me and her. We also had other people on this call. It then turns into just this back and forth. My colleague is sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? I'm sitting there like, what the hell is going on? This woman is storming off the screen. She's coming back. She eventually just hangs up. So I'm in the office, bear in mind, when all of this is happening. So I'm now just panicking. So I'm like, what is going on? Like, what have I done? Like, you know, I've just got no idea what's going on. And about half an hour later, after that interaction on this call, guess who comes up to speak to me? HR. They're like, Katie, can we go for like a quick chat? So my heart now is beating because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's reported me to HR. I'm about to get like fired, or like this is just really bad. So I'm just panicking now. I go with the lady with HR and she's being very, very, very nice to me and just chatting to me. She knew that I was engaged and stuff. So she was asking about like my wedding plans and things like that. And I just thought she was being, you know, when someone's trying to butter you up and be nice to you before they say something like whatever to you. So I think at one point I was a bit like, did you want, you know, are you speaking to me? Did you ask to speak to me because of what happened, you know, this morning and what's been happening with my manager? And at this point she was like, what's been happening with your manager? And I was like, oh wait, has she not, is that not why you wanted to speak to me? Has she not come to like, I don't know, report me to you? And the HR manager was like, no, like, I just wanted to talk to you because, you know, we had a conversation a few weeks ago. I said that I would catch up with you and I never got round to it. So yeah, I just thought I would grab you if you had some time. So I was like, oh, well, of course now she's curious to know what I was talking about. And at that point, I feel like I was just so anxious and just paranoid being at work that I felt like I just, you know what, I've just got nothing else to lose by just talking to HR at this point because I don't know what's going on anymore. Yeah, so I told everything to HR. I believe perhaps HR then spoke to my manager and then she tried to message me and asked to speak to me face to face the following week. By this point now, I am just not really interested in anything that my manager has to say to me anymore. It's like I'm now a bit scared of her. I'm scared that she's going to try and like draw me out in a conversation or accuse me of doing something that I've not done or accuse me of saying something that I've not done. And to be honest, I don't even want to be having one-on-one conversations with her anymore via messaging or in person. So that day I asked for the rest of the day off because I just wasn't feeling very well and it was just too much to deal with. And at this point, she then turned very nice. It was, oh, of course, take as much time as you need, da, 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 da. Let me know when you're ready to come back, and da, 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 da. And that was the evening that I decided to write my resignation letter because I was just over it. I was absolutely fed up. When writing my letter, I wasn't sure whether to just kind of do a standard resignation letter and just, you know, leave it at that or to really kind of express why I was leaving. And ultimately, I decided to stay true to myself and be, you know, I'm not going to slink away. You're not going to get to treat me like crap and think that I'm just going to slink away and not say anything. So I decided to write a very detailed and long resignation letter. It was about a page long, and then I also attached a 5-page document listing out all the different instances and situations in which I felt my manager had targeted me, harassed me, bullied me, and instances which I felt had very heavy racial undertones from her towards me. And it was 5 pages long. It included hyperlinks to screenshots from chats that we'd had, conversations that we had. There were calendar bits in there as well to support like some of the things that I was raising. And yeah, on Friday morning, I sent the email over. I CC'd in my manager. I sent it to the HR manager and also to the HR assistant as well, who had been kind of supporting me through this. And yeah, that was that. In the email, because of how bad my mental and physical health had gotten at that point, I expressed that I wouldn't be able to work the notice period of 2 months because I no longer felt safe at work anymore, if I'm being completely honest. I just didn't know what my manager was going to do to me. She was quite senior in the business as well and had been there for a very, very long time, over a decade. So it felt like perhaps she had told other people and was going to rally people to dislike me as well or make my life difficult at work. And it was too much for me to deal with, and I just needed to get out. To my surprise, actually, HR were very, very positive and responsive, and they immediately said that they would be launching an investigation into my manager's behaviour towards me. They did invite me to participate in the investigation. However, at that point, I chose to decline. My purpose and my reasoning for, sending over that evidence and that extremely long resignation letter wasn't to start this investigation against my manager. I'm not really in the business of making people's lives like difficult, or, I'm just not, even when someone's done me wrong, I'm still like, I don't want to sink to your level and make you feel the way that you've made me feel. And my thought process with sending over that evidence and that resignation email was that I could leave with my head held high, knowing that I had spoken up for myself and spoken out and defended myself. And I didn't just, as I said, slink away and allow these people to feel like, they had just gotten away with treating me like that. I really wanted them to know what my manager had been doing and how she'd been treating me this time that I'd been there, to the point where it now made me feel like my role at this company was just untenable for me to continue. So that was my purpose for doing it. And I even said in the resignation email that I'm not looking for her to be, I don't want anything like bad to happen to her. I'm not doing that because of that. So when I was asked to participate in the investigation, I said no, but obviously my resignation email and the evidence that I submitted, that can be used. You can use that however you want, but I don't want to personally play like a role in that investigation. And I was also leaving. I was desperate to just leave. My mental health was in the pits. I did not have the capacity to now start dragging on another investigation where it speaks to God knows how many more people about all of this. I needed to get out for the sake of my sanity. So, that was allowed. I was asked to spend another week working because one of my colleagues was off work. So I was asked to just cover this period because my manager was then suspended. So I worked the last week. Again, I wasn't sure how much people around the business knew about what was going on. Obviously, this senior person has now been suspended. No one spoke to me about it, and I kind of felt a little bit of hostility from some people. So my main aim was to just power through that last week and just keep my head down, end on the most positive note that I could in that kind of circumstance, and stay true to my words of obviously passing on what I need to pass on. And I'll keep working to the highest of my standards until I leave, because that's how I am. And then I left, and yeah, I didn't really get to say goodbye to anyone. The atmosphere there was just very odd. I didn't really trust anyone anymore. So I didn't really know what to say to people. I didn't also want to gossip about it as well. I wasn't sure how much other people knew. So it was just really sad. One part that I did miss out, actually, that's quite important, is during that week where everything was kind of coming to, the finale, I actually went back to read that review that I had read before I started working at the company. And by kind of deducing the things that were said, I could kind of tell it was written by a Black woman. And I then went on LinkedIn and tried to match up the dates with when the review was written to find out who it could potentially be. And I was quite convinced that I'd found the person on LinkedIn. And I messaged them and asked if I could have a conversation about their experience at the job. And this girl was really lovely. She was honestly so nice. She said immediately, yes, we can have a call. And she rang me up the next day and we spent 2 hours on the phone. And I was so apprehensive before I called this girl, because this was before I was really ready to hand in my notice, and I was still convinced that it could be me, something that I was doing and missing, and I was just, I don't know, rubbing this person up the wrong way. I don't know, I was still convinced that I was the problem. So my worst nightmare would be to ring up this black girl and hear her talk about the job, and she sits there saying that she absolutely loves it and it was great, and do you know what I mean? That would be my worst nightmare, because at that point I think I honestly would have felt like I was going insane. Thankfully though, well, not thankfully, I mean, she had the same experience as me. It was very, very negative. And by the end of it, I was crying as she told me her story, because the way that she was describing how she was feeling by the end of it, just, you know, being really down and depressed, being very anxious, being very paranoid as well, and just a hostile environment being created around her, was exactly how I was feeling and the exact experience that I was having. So to kind of hear her talk about it made me really, really sad. But it also made me really relieved, because it made me realize, okay, this is not a me problem. She also told me about other black girls who had been at this company and had very similar experiences, some of them involving this same manager. So that was honestly the clarification and the affirmation that I needed to just be like, to kind of listen to myself and be true to what my gut was telling me, that I hadn't done anything wrong, this wasn't me. And that I also needed to leave, that it wasn't going to get any better, and this was kind of the end of the road. And that was the point at which the next day then I had done my resignation email. So cannot thank that girl enough, honestly, for bringing my feet back down to the ground, because I honestly felt like I was just going crazy and just being a little bit delusional. So to have someone just tell me that, no, you're not, honestly, like, I know exactly how you feel and what you're talking about, and was just amazing. But yeah, also sad, as I said, to hear that like other people had gone through that experience. So yes, oh my gosh, that was I feel like that was just so long. But yeah, so that was basically my entire experience there. And honestly, coming straight out of it in February, I had a lot of work to do to repair just myself and my inner self and how I was feeling. My self-esteem was in absolute tatters. Like, I just had no confidence in myself. I had no confidence in my skills, in my work, what I do. And I've always been confident and, you know, self-assured about the fact that I'm very, very good at my job and that I deliver like good results and, you know, all of this stuff. I'd always been very, very positive and confident in that. But this whole experience just really, really knocked me. Yeah, I can only describe those 10 months at that place as traumatic. And I think a lot of people don't realize how traumatizing the corporate workplace can be for Black women, and how isolating it can be as well. And I think the worst part when I reflect on that experience was just not really having anyone that I could kind of speak to about it or commiserate with, or, just have honest conversations with. I didn't have anyone that I trusted enough to do that. And oftentimes when Black women work in corporate workspaces, you will often be one of few, if not the only Black women there. Do you know what I mean? So it's very difficult to kind of find people that kind of understand you on that level. And that being said, even sometimes when you do work with other Black women or other Black people, sometimes there is a tendency for you to kind of not actually gravitate towards each other because you don't want to get the label of being, you know, the Blacks and or the Black group or the Black crew. And, you know, you don't want to kind of affirm already existing stereotypes about, you know, groups of Black people or whatever. So you try to kind of stick apart, and that's actually quite sad that you have to do that. But I've definitely met a lot of Black people that just don't really like associating with other Black people in the office, and I don't know, it's not personally what I would do, but I completely get it, and I'm not going to judge anyone for doing that. And I'm also don't want to bring my problems to somebody else's doorstep, because some people are happy, some Black people are happy to kind of just put their heads down and just get on with it. Do you know what I mean? So I don't want to, if I'm not like that, I don't want to put someone else in a position of having to feel like they need to back me. Do you know what I mean? Which is sad. Do you know what I mean? It's sad on like both sides. And also when there's no like Black women or Black people in senior positions at these corporations as well, like there's no one that you can go to who actually has influence to kind of support you or at least kind of know what's going on. Or do you know what I mean? So it is a very isolating experience. So since I've left the job, it made me want to like, you know, do a bit of research around like Black women in the corporate workspace and see what else was out there. And I stumbled across an article that was describing a phenomenon called the pet to threat phenomenon that specifically was centered around Black women. And it was basically this idea that when you start in your corporate career, you will often be perceived as a pet, in the sense that, you know, people are willing to help you, they're happy to help you, they're excited to kind of show you the ropes, how things work, share their knowledge that they have, and they almost want to see you do well. And in the article, it says that at this stage in your career, you might find that you have a mentor who's very like positive and, you know, really wants to see you do well, and yeah, things will feel good. I would say that definitely correlates with my experience at the start of my career. I started my career in the corporate world when I was 21. I dropped out of uni when I was 19 doing digital media and communications, and then I worked in retail for 2 and a bit years, and then found my way into this opportunity in the corporate work world. So I definitely was wide-eyed. I was 21. I was ready to go. Do you know what I mean? I could not believe my luck that I had managed to segue my way into, you know, a respectable, super cool career for a really cool media company doing really amazing stuff. While all of my peers were obviously still in university. Like, I was buzzing, honestly. And I think my general demeanor at that stage of my career was very much happy to be here. Happy to be in the rooms, happy to be learning. I would do anything that was asked of me. I was so eager to learn. I mean, I'd never sent an email before at that point, you know what I mean? So I was so happy to be in this like professional, big girl environment and stuff. And yeah, I was happy to be a sponge for everyone else's knowledge so that I could grow and learn. And I did actually have a mentor at that point. He was a director in the business, and yeah, he was very kind of helpful and stuff. He would give me like, you know, words of wisdom and encouragement. He talked to me about his kind of career trajectory and stuff. And yeah, it was all very like interesting stuff and helpful. And then the article goes on to describe the threat part of the phenomenon, which is where you now have been working in your industry for a few years and you have developed more skills, you're more confident, you don't perhaps look for as much reassurance and support as before, because obviously you don't need it. Like, you're more comfortable in your role, and you're accountable for your own workloads and your own responsibilities as well. And the article basically says that this is at the point in which a lot of attitudes towards Black women in the workplace often shift, when now, as the name suggests, you are now perceived to be a threat, and people don't want to really help you anymore because they believe that helping you could potentially mean that you are doing better than them. And if you are like a capable Black woman who's really bright, ambitious, really good at your job, you might find that you start to struggle at this point because there might be like increased hostility. And that's definitely what I feel has happened now that I'm like 5 years into my career. I'm no longer the most junior person in the room or in meetings. I'm no longer this person who needs my hand held through every like task and I'm at a point now where if I hear something that's like just wrong, or, you know, not the best way to proceed according to my expertise and knowledge, I will chime in. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of those qualities are what causes people in the workplace who do have issues with Black women being in corporate workspaces to start to turn away from you. And that's ultimately how I felt at that job. I feel like there was this air where my manager believed that I just didn't belong there, or I didn't deserve to be there. I think she had a lot of issues with the fact that I knew as much as I did, oftentimes more than her, only because my entire career for 5 years has specifically been in social media, not general marketing or general communications, like specifically social media. So I'm very kind of knowledgeable in that area, and she just didn't seem to like it. It seemed to really irritate her, and I think that's quite a wider set problem as well. I think, you know, there are white people that work in the corporate workspaces that do genuinely believe, that like it's not a Black person's place to be there, and God forbid if you're in a senior position, you know what I mean, like you will get grilled. They want to know like how on earth you've done it. And yeah, that was just always the vibe that I sometimes, you know, got from not just that manager, but also a few other people in the office. Obviously, the senior manager that made that comment to me, assuming that I would be, you know, the most junior. It's like, no, I'm 5 years into my career and in a senior position. Do you know what I mean? So I've definitely felt the end of that phenomenon where you start to become a threat. And when you work under someone like I did, who was just hell-bent on kind of sabotaging you, making you look bad, not wanting to support you to do your best, it becomes very, very difficult to thrive in that environment. And it's tough. It's honestly tough for Black women. One thing that it made me realise was when I was a little bit younger, I used to always be really fascinated by the amount of Black women who were, you know, entrepreneurs and had their own businesses, and I just thought it was amazing. And I always used to take note of how young some of these women were. They'd be in like their late 20s, early 30s, starting these really successful businesses. And I guess at the time, I kind of just felt like, oh, black girls winning in business. Like, black girls just love business. They love starting businesses. We're so good at businesses. Until I've kind of I'm 27 now, and I've hit that age now, and I'm at that point in my career. And I now realize, oh my gosh, like a lot of these women started their careers in the corporate work world and they left around 26, 27, 28 to go and pursue their own endeavors. And now being in this situation, having had the experiences that I've had, I can see now how that happens, how that kind of transition happens, where I think it gets to the point where a lot of black women may feel that it is easier to leave and start their own business from the ground up, knowing full well what starting their own business or starting a new endeavor entails. They feel more empowered and assured of doing that than they do to stay in the corporate workplace, because it is that difficult to navigate and it takes that much of a toll on your mental and physical health. I feel like they just decide it's not worth it. Like, I'd rather struggle and do my own stuff than stay here and have to prove myself constantly to a bunch of people who are committed to just seeing me in a negative light and putting a ceiling on how far I can go. And, when I thought about it like that, I was like, actually, that's kind of sad. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm at that crossroads now in my career where I'm having to have a serious think about where exactly I see myself going. Do I want to continue my corporate career, or is it going to be the same problems just in different fonts at different companies, And that's sad because, I don't come from much, and I also dropped out of university. So having a corporate career and, that was something I was happy and willing to do for like the rest of my working career. Do you know what I mean? But to be 5 years in and to see my future as very, very difficult, something that, is just, I'm always going to kind of be in spaces where I feel like this, feel left out, like the odd one out, that I'm being looked down on. It's just not for me. Like, I'm not sure if it's for me. I'm not sure if it's something that I can hack. So that is something that I am definitely, I'm currently, thinking of and seeing where my future will go. And I think it's so sad that black women have to make that very real decision so early on in their career. And it's difficult seeing others kind of thrive and do really well and seem to be like very embraced within their networks and in the companies, and you to just not feel like that because people have certain opinions about black women, or they have stereotypes, and because you don't fit those stereotypes, you make them uncomfortable. So there's just so much stuff that black women honestly deal with in the corporate workplace, and it's just tough. And it's tough that no one else really seems to care that a lot of black women are struggling in the corporate work world. And to see the amount of TikToks I have with tens of thousands of likes and thousands of comments of black women saying, I relate, same for me, oh my gosh, this sounds like my story. That's not normal and that's not okay. And as I said, in light of the riots that are going on in the UK and this rise in kind of racism, I think a lot of people in the UK get very confused, and they think that racists are just, poor white people with no teeth and who can barely talk. Those are the racists of the country and that's it. And no, I think the middle and upper classes actually have, if not a more insidious form of racism, where it's not in your face and it's not anything that they say specifically to you. It's the actions, it's the words that they say, it's the things that they don't say, it's the way that they make you feel, it's the way they isolate you. All of those are different forms of racism in the workplace. And because of the way they take place in the corporate workplace, it is really, really difficult to report. And I was very lucky that I was able to articulate myself enough, and I had enough kind of evidence that, meant that my manager could be suspended for how she had been with me. And to the best of my knowledge, recently I did see that she's actually left the company after about 12, 13 years. So that's my personal victory in all of this. I know it's not great to celebrate people's downfalls, but after the way she treated me and made me feel for that long, and knowing that I'm not the first person she'd done that to, I'm so glad that she finally got her comeuppance. And, am I sad that I'm not working there now that she's not? No, I think, the problems did not start and end with her. I think they were quite indicative of just wider and bigger issues within that company and their approach to, behavior like that. So I just think she was the tip of the iceberg. Do you know what I mean? I feel like if I had stayed, it maybe would have turned into someone else doing that to me, or I don't know, it could have just affected how I then was perceived at the company. So I think I left at the right time. And yeah, and it's kind of, you know, bittersweet. I think as much as I knew it was the right thing to do, immediately after leaving, there was a pang of me that felt like, you know, am I a bit of a failure? Am I a loser for, you know, not sticking with it? But as the weeks and months have gone on, I realized that that's just not true. And you should never, ever, ever feel like a loser, especially as a Black woman, if you feel the need to leave where you're working because it has just become a place where you don't feel happy and you don't feel safe as a Black woman. Never feel like you're a failure, or that you couldn't hack it, or you weren't good enough to stick around, or you didn't change yourself enough to stick around. Like, all of that is crap. Do you know what I mean? And Black women should not have to be a certain way, act a certain way, look a certain way in order to get respect in the workplace, and in order to be seen as full individuals that bring something to a team or a business. We shouldn't have to do all of these somersaults. And personally, I'm over the respectability politics as well. I understand that that's advice that is given to a lot of Black women on how to survive in the corporate work world, but I'm just not here to do it. I'm not going to somersault and flip and do all of these crazy things just to receive the bare minimum of respect at work. I shouldn't have to do that. Nobody should. No Black woman should. As long as you believe in yourself and you know who you are and your strengths, your skills, you can just go on, move on to bigger and better things. Even if you have to take a temporary L, just get out of there, because no working environment is worth sacrificing your self-esteem, your mental health, and your physical health for. So ultimately, I'm glad that I left. I'm so happy, and day by day I just feel like my confidence coming back and just getting back to being my old self, who's excited about life and excited about the work that I do. And yeah, but I just really wanted to share this experience just in case it helps anyone, just so that other Black women out there know that you're not alone. Do you know what I mean? It's not an isolated experience, and don't let those people make you feel crazy in that place. Like, know your own mind and know your own self. So I am going to wrap up this first episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that perhaps I taught you something, or I don't know, opened your mind to something that you maybe might not have thought of. But yeah, I just thought this is a really important topic, and it just feels so timely to talk about it now. And also, I'm at a place where I've made like so much peace with this as well, because I didn't want to come up here and cry on my first episode. So I'm glad that I waited until I was, you know, in a space to talk about this. And yeah, I would love to do a kind of follow-up episode if there's more to be said. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week for another episode.